Hello readers and writers, I'm MJ and let's do some Pride recommendations. So it's June, which means your TBRs are full of Pride books, and maybe as the month's gone on, you've run out of some book recommendations to pick up. And I thought it would be a great idea to do recommendations for all of the Rainbow of Pride, LGBTQIA recommendations, and to break it down in that way, although obviously there is some overlap between the various categories. And to add a little bit more fun to this, my kid is also including some song recommendations. So when I say my kid, I mean my 19-year-old non-binary child, who I call my kid. Their allowance. This is agreed upon terminology, but I know it kind of trips some people up thinking that they're not an adult, but they are. Recently, they wanted to make a playlist that was Pride songs, but were also by specifically LGBTQIA identified artists. So I posted on Threads and got some amazing recommendations, and they have been working on expanding their own knowledge of queer music. And so we thought it would be interesting to kind of include some of the recommendations of songs either they've loved previously or have found through this experience, because y'all might be interested as well. My knowledge of music is very bad. Being the autistic that I am, I have a lot of noise sensitivity, so I don't listen to a lot of music, so I'm really bad at that kind of recommendations. But the kid loves music, so I think hopefully this will make a very fun video, and you will find a lot of new recommendations both for music as well as for reading. So let's go through the alphabet, starting with L, or lesbian. And for this, the kids' song recommendations are Girls by Betta LeMay, may have said that wrong, as well as Girls, Girls, Girls by Fletcher. I do know somebody gave them a Spotify playlist that was a lesbian playlist, and they were very thrilled to find so many songs about girls falling in love with girls. But I think these are have become two of their favorites. So for this, I have one of the good ones, and this is a book about two sisters who are mourning the death of their third sister, who is a YouTuber for anti-racism and civil engagements. And their sister has been killed in the after effects of a protest. And so to become close to her, they decide to go on a journey that their sister had planned, and then also post it on her YouTube channel. And we get the POV of both the sisters, and also the POV of the sister who has passed on. And we find out that the sister, as they're learning more about her, that she is a lesbian and has not come out to her family. This is a very complex novel dealing with racism as well as homophobia, and it is one that doesn't box itself into a specific genre. It was a very interesting read, and one that I would recommend for anyone to pick up. Another book for lesbian fiction is The Imposition of Unnecessary Obstacles. This is by Makia Ann Older, and this is the first of a series of kind of detective science fiction novels that are set in orbital platforms around Jupiter. The first book has, well, both the books in the series have very neurodiverse main characters. The first one is probably a little bit more difficult to connect with because you're also connecting with this character as well as trying to understand the world building. But so definitely give it an extra shot, because once you get situated, it's a fantastic novel and very sapphic. And then also moving on to having a different point of view in the second novel. They're definitely fun reads, having this combination of like old school detective novels combined with science fiction. It's definitely not a combination we have enough. All right, so now moving on to G, or gay, and the kids song recommendations for this is Boys Who Like Boys by Eli Lib and Muscle by Ollie Alexander. And my book recommendations, the first one is A Little Bit Country, and this is a book I picked up because I got it in a book box, but I honestly did not expect to like it. It is young adult male romance that is set by an aspiring country music star and grandson of another country music star. And it just, nothing about this said that I would enjoy it. But I like giving new books shots, and I'm so glad I do, because I come across gems like this that, even though I'm definitely not the target audience, it was just so good that I enjoyed reading it. The writing is fantastic. The subplots beyond the relationship were so well done and really was my favorite aspect of it. The relationship's great also. Everyone is above 18, which as an adult reader I appreciate. I wouldn't say it's closed door, so there is some spice, but not overwhelmingly so. So I think it was written in a way that kind of like, it's almost like appropriate for everyone, which is really hard to do actually. It was just so fantastically well written, and the characters in it are amazing. So I highly recommend checking this out, even if at first it doesn't seem like something that you would enjoy. And my next recommendation for gay is How to Bite Your Neighbor and Win a Wager. This is the first in a series of male romance vampire novels by an autistic non-binary author. And this is one I actually would recommend the entire series to you. So far there's 2 books and some short stories in it, but I'm just going to go ahead and start with the first book because that's where the series starts. But it's a world where vampires have been created and they are now second-class citizens. Kind of mishaps have these 2 young men meet and form a relationship. As you get further into the series, there is more neurodiversity representation, which I personally enjoy. It's definitely a series I would recommend you go and check out. Now on to bisexual representation. The first book I would recommend is You Exist Too Much, and this is a book by a Palestinian American author with a Palestinian American main character who does not have her life figured out, but what she does know is that she is bi. She has relationships with both women and men. The book itself is fantastic, right across so many areas, specifically with mental health. If you do struggle with mental health, with eating disorders, this may be triggering for you, so definitely read through the synopsis of the book. Specifically, the character is not in their treatment for an eating disorder currently in the novel, but had been previously. But she is in a residential treatment throughout the novel, and the representation of that, I thought, was very well done. Very messy character, but not in a good way. Like, just talking about the complexities of multiple identities and how those interact, and that's how we can be messy humans, but that doesn't limit our worth. And it's just there's just so many nuance to this book that you should absolutely go and read it. My next recommendation for bisexual is I Am Not Your Chosen One. And this is an epic journey fantasy novel that is indie published, with the main character being bisexual. And at first, he kind of is a little lusty on everyone, kind of perpetuating this myth of, well, if you're bi, then you just want everyone. And it did seem to come across that way at first, but then I think it was kind of just the author getting their setting, and then it does not continue on that way, but it does firmly establish bi representation and the impact of bi representation within his life. And so I think that part of it is very, very important, because even with bi books, and as we talk about bi identities, a lot of the talk seems to be you have to be one way or the other, where Sexual identity is a lot more, and often is a lot more complex than that. I mean, obviously not for everybody, but I think it's great that this book does actually talk about that. All right, next is T, what is trans books, and I have so many videos on trans books that it was hard to narrow it down to 2 recommendations. So I did. But first, the song recommendation from the kid is The Village by Rebel, and I'm not sure if I've heard this one or not. But there you go. Go listen to it and let me know what you think about it. And the book recommendation, the first one is He, She, They, and how we talk about gender and why it matters. And this is actually a nonfiction book that I just finished reading with the kid, and it is a book that is written towards allies, but then also addresses trans individuals. It talks a lot about the author's own trans experience, but then brings in other perspectives. It's a very good way to start if you want to know about trans identity, the basics of like biology and gender intersection in our society. So I would definitely recommend that you go and check this book out. And then another recommendation I have is actually a science fiction book called Junker 7. This is also sapphic. The main character is non-binary, autistic, and so it has a lot. The storyline and the plot deals a lot, just kind of with like a trans revolution. I think is a lot of a pushback and a lot of the legislation that's been going on around our time, and just kind of like expressing that we're people. We as trans individuals are people and should be treated as such, and we shouldn't have to be this threatened all the time. It's a fantastic book. You should absolutely go check it out. I will say that there's some things in this book that even thinking back to it still makes me chuckle, such as the use of cell phones across planets, or the fact that our main character bought their spaceship on Craigslist. So as a sci-fi writer perspective, there's a little bit that didn't quite add up for interplanetary travel, but didn't take away from the story or the message of the book, and still makes me laugh every time I think about it. Hopefully, I mean, I feel in a good way. And that brings us to the letter Q. So Q stands for queer, and the kid's song recommendation for Q is Queer by Garbage, and also Pink Pony Club by Chappelle Rowan. Garbage is one of my favorite bands. I have listened to them for years, so definitely second that recommendation. Now, queer can mean a lot of things for a lot of different people. When I'm doing recommendations, I took it as maybe not quite as solid of an identity, or like as defined as an identity is a better way to put that. And so that is how I find my recommendations for this. My first recommendation is Sparks and Tether, and this is a science fiction novel with a male non-binary relationship. And so it probably could go under gay. And I know when we talk about non-binary female relationships, we just definitely lump them under lesbian or sapphic, but I feel like we don't do that as much under gays. And maybe we should, but it felt more appropriate to put this book under queer specifically. It is a political science fiction novel that follows the entire stretch of this relationship. Maybe not the entire stretch, but a good portion of a stretch of this relationship, and there's a lot of politics that's going on throughout of this. There is very complex world building, complex character building, and it's definitely a book that I would highly recommend that you go and check out. It's also very queer normative as well. And my next book recommendation for queer is B. This is an autistic vampire Chicano novel that I put under queer because the world is extremely queer normative, and there's just queer, there's just everything. There's trans rep, non-binary rep, bisexual rep, gay rep, lesbian rep. It's a very queer book, and so I thought it was best encaptured under the queer identity. I really enjoy the autism rep in this book, as well as the world building, and I highly recommend you go check this one out as well. Next, we have I, which is Intersex. And for the kids' recommendation for music, it is Aftertaste by Mystic Teat Party. And for my book recommendations, I have Across the Green Grass Fields. This is part of the Wayward Children series, and I don't believe Sean McGuire is intersex herself. However, I'm not 100% positive about that. This is probably one of the first books I've read knowingly having intersex representation, and I will say that this is definitely an area that I specifically need to read more about. While I was looking at books for this identity, there's just so many out there that I haven't even added to my TBR before prepping for this video, so it's an area I plan to start reading. But my next recommendation is Sorrowland. This is a speculative fiction novel that deals a lot with gender diversity, and biological sex diversity, neurodiversity, and integration with society. It is speculative fiction, so it is written in a non-linear way. I will say with this novel that there is a child that is written way too adult for the age of the child, but know that going into it. The rest of it is fantastic. River Solomon is one of my favorite authors. They have written one of my absolute favorite books, An Unkindness of Ghosts. And also their book, The Deep, is fantastic as well. They are a non-binary, autistic, intersex author. So absolutely, if you have not checked out their work, check out anything that they have written. But so even if you would like something more classically science fiction, Sorrowland is I believe, an underappreciated novel. So I would recommend that you go check it out specifically. And the last defined letter of this LGBTQIA is the A, with sounds for asexual, aromantic, and agender, all of which are my very specific identities. And narrowing this down to 2 book recommendations is both extremely easy and extremely hard. There is just not enough books written about aromanticy and asexuality, and books written mostly about specifically agender tend to get more classified under trans fiction, at least for me specifically. So for the music recommendation, Kid has recommended The Code by Nemo. This is a book. This is music that has been playing since they first found it a couple weeks ago. I didn't even know Eurovision singing contest was a thing until they found this song. But since then, it has definitely become a family favorite. If you listen to no other song, I recommend you go listen to this because their vocal range is fantastic. And then the other song recommendation I kind of influenced them to add, and that is Flowers by Miley Cyrus. Miley Cyrus is not aromantic. They are pansexual. However, Flowers is kind of my aromantic song. I kind of really identify with this aspect of we don't need to be in a relationship, and that doesn't come across in music very often that are often love songs. So that is my influence to the song list. That's pretty much it. But none of the books I'm actually recommending are agender. First book is Early Adopter, and this is a romantic representation where the main character is not asexual. They are, however, non-binary and black, and they are a detective that is going to investigate things in the world. Be forewarned, especially since so many people that are aromantic are also asexual, that this book has a lot of very graphic sexual representation, and also fetish representation. So just know that going in. I think this book is excellently written with fantastic world building, and I don't think there is a lot of specifically aromantic representation that also doesn't include asexual representation. So it's definitely much needed book to be had. I do know that it does have a strong sense of sexuality and fetishism written into the very core of the book. And then the last book I have to recommend is In the Lives of Puppets. This was my favorite book, fantasy book from last year, and I really resonate with Victor, who is aromantic and asexual. And it's one of the few books that I have read that has asexual jokes in it that I actually found hilariously funny and actually play enough with my own identity to laugh about my own identity in a comfortable, very comfortable way. And so I really appreciated that about this novel. So that is my book recommendation and the kids recommendation of the across the spectrum. So I hope you found something new to read. I would love to know your recommendations down below. I was very happy to see how many of these books naturally were indie published books. I do try to support indie authors very much. And I find a lot of autistic authors who also have a higher tendency to also be part of the LGBTQIA community. We do indie publish. So I was really happy to see how it naturally fell into my recommendations. Also, if you are interested, I do have science fiction and fantasy books that I have written that are very queer, specifically agender, aromantic, and asexual, that you can see down in my link tree below. And I do have a new series that is releasing in August that features a trans vampire. So if you're interested in that, there's more information down below. Click on my link tree. But I hope you found something new to read, to pick up, and I look forward to you letting me know more recommendations in the comments. And as always, you keep reading, keep writing, and until next time.